They say home is where the heart is, but what if your heart is broken? This is a review of the Star Trek Enterprise episode Home. If you have not seen this episode and you don't want to know what T'Pol's mom is like, be warned, spoilers beyond this point. So, this is the first episode after the conclusion of the year-long Xindi arc, and the crew of Enterprise returns to Earth to a hero's welcome and everything is fine, right? Right. Good. Good. We open with the crew of Enterprise being welcomed home after returning from their mission into the Delphic expanse. There's a crowd of, I don't know, what do you think, a couple hundred people gathered in a stadium to cheer Captain Archer and his senior officers. Archer gives a brief speech where he's like, let's remember the 27 members of our crew who didn't make it back from this mission. I mean, no one does remember them because none of them were important characters, but I'm told there were 27 of them. May their corpses form a stairway to the future. Thank you! Later, Archer is at a bar fixing to get pants-pissing drunk when his old flame and newly promoted Starfleet captain Erica Hernandez walks up. They do a bit of light flirting and establish that there's a debriefing tomorrow with Archer and Starfleet top brass. And as the commanding officer of the soon-to-be-launched Starship Columbia, Hernandez will be there too. Meanwhile, T'Pol is packing for a trip home to Vulcan to visit her mother, and Trip drops in like, hey, gee, I sure wish I had a family to go home to, but my entire hometown was destroyed in future 9/11, so... sigh. T'Pol's like, do you want to go with me? My mom knows nothing about you. I'm not going to tell her you're coming, and it's going to be unbearably awkward. I'll start packing! Archer visits Hernandez aboard the Columbia, which is being prepped for launch. Hernandez is like, any suggestions? And Archer's like, guns! Take as many guns and torpedoes as you can fit on this thing, because the whole universe is out to kill you. The debriefing doesn't go super well. Archer gets defensive when Ambassador Saval challenges him about not trying harder to save a ship full of violently insane Vulcans Enterprise encountered during its mission to the Expanse, and Admiral Forrest pulls Archer aside and tells him the briefing has been suspended and orders Archer to take some time off and calm down. So Archer decides to go mountain climbing, and Hernandez invites herself to go with. Phlox is on his way down to Earth when he meets Malcolm in the corridor and pawns most of his luggage off on him. Malcolm warns Phlox that there have been a few incidents on Earth of humans attacking aliens. The Xindi threat has triggered a fresh wave of xenophobia. Phlox isn't worried. It's not as if humans are an inherently violent and intolerant group of people, is it? T'Pol and Trip arrive at T'Pol's mom's place on Vulcan. Trip is immediately sent to the guest room, and T'Pol's mom, Teles, hands T'Pol a letter from Kos, her former fiancé, who apparently is not doing well with the whole accepting their breakup thing. As Archer and Hernandez are climbing the mountain, Hernandez is like, so who do you think I should get to be my tactical officer on my new ship? And Archer's like, get the biggest, baddest, no conscience having, most unstoppable killing machine you can find. Because I'm telling you, once you get out there, you'll realize that it's not about exploring strange new worlds. It's about not getting you and your crew mass murdered. So what's space like? Is it fun? On Vulcan, T'Pol wakes Trip up at the ass crack of dawn because on Vulcan, it's the custom for the guests to prepare the morning meal for the host. God, Vulcans suck. Welcome to our home. Make yourself comfortable after your long journey, but not too comfortable because you're getting up at 4 a.m. to cook me breakfast. Over breakfast, Teles, T'Pol, and Trip chat about various things. Teles's recent retirement, T'Pol's consideration of accepting a commission with Starfleet now that she is no longer with the Vulcan High Command, and the fact that a few of Teles's kitchen appliances need repair. Trip offers to take a look at them. Teles isn't pleased with the idea of T'Pol joining Starfleet, and they have a little bit of a fight about it until T'Pol is like, please, mother, not in front of the Human. I can spell. I work in engineering, not security. On Earth, Phlox is out for a drink with Malcolm and Travis when a racist human guy walks up and starts some shit over Phlox being an alien. Malcolm tells the guy to go fuck himself, a bar brawl kicks off, but Phlox quickly diffuses the situation by puffing up his face real big, which makes everybody stop and go, what the fuck is happening, long enough for things to calm down. Trip is fixing Teles's refrigerator when Teles walks in. Trip thanks her for letting him stay here, and Teles says, expressing gratitude is an Earth custom. T'Pol says thank you all the time. That's because she's got earth fever, but whatever, let's cut to the chase. I know you're fucking my daughter. How'd you find out? You weren't as quiet as you thought you were when you snuck into her room last night. Also, you are a screamer. There's a knock at the door, and Teles is like, Trip, could you get that, even though this isn't your house and I'm right here? It'll be more dramatic that way. Trip answers the door, and it's T'Pol's ex-fiancé, Koss. T'Pol and Koss go out to the courtyard to have a chat. Long story short, Koss wants her back, but she doesn't want him. He's like, it's not entirely up to us. Our families arranged our marriage. That's just how we do here on Vulcan. Besides, you might not want to marry me, but I still want to marry you, and that's good enough for me. Koss sweetens the deal by offering to ask his big shot father to help get T'Pol's mom her job back. T'Pol's like, what are you talking about? My mom retired. Koss is like, no, not really. She was asked to resign, but you should probably talk to her about it. Get back to me on the whole getting married thing. T'Pol confronts her mom about her retirement that's not a retirement, and Teles tells her the truth. The Vulcan High Command forced her out of her job as a way of punishing T'Pol because they blamed her for the destruction of a Vulcan monastery back in Season 1. They couldn't take it out on T'Pol because she was away on Enterprise, so they took it out on her mom instead. Seems perfectly logical to me. Teles tells T'Pol to give up on whatever she's hoping for with Trip. Humans and Vulcans don't go together like that. And if they did ever have children, the kids would be the cause of great shame, because Vulcans are jerks. We check in on Archer and Hernandez's mountain climbing excursion. It's dark, and Archer has a dream about being attacked by a pair of Xindi who chuck him off a cliff. He wakes up, and Hernandez is like, you want to talk about it? You can tell me anything. What happens on the mountain stays on the mountain. Archer tells her that when he looks at her, he sees himself 3 years ago, the explorer who wants to reach out into the galaxy, blissfully unaware of the dangers that await. Hernandez is like, you see yourself when you look at me, huh? And she leans in and smooches him. What's it like to kiss yourself? I bet not as good as getting a beej from myself. I will not be making an experience beej joke at this time, but I know a bunch of you are dying to, so you know where the comment section is. Go nuts. T'Pol takes Trip to see Vulcan Mount Rushmore and also to tell him that she's decided to marry Koss. She explains about her mother and says that she's not going to live on Vulcan, she'll still be aboard the Enterprise. Trip's like, so you brought me with you to Vulcan so I could watch you get married to a total zero you don't even like? Sorry. But, I mean, Vulcans are jerks. On the mountain the next morning, Archer and Hernandez share another long, passionate smooch, and apparently they're dating now? Sort of. They return to San Francisco, and Archer completes his debriefing without further incident. When it's over, he takes Ambassador Saval aside and apologizes for being so combative with him before. Saval returns the favor, telling Archer that he was wrong to oppose Archer's appointment as Enterprise's commanding officer. He also acknowledges that Archer's actions in the Delphic Expanse saved not only Earth, but Vulcan as well. He sticks out his hand. Thank you, he says. Aboard Enterprise, Phlox chats with Hoshi while treating her for parasites she picked up God knows where, doing God knows what with God knows who. Hoshi invites Phlox down to Earth for some Chinese food, but after the incident at the bar, Phlox decides it's better to stay on the ship. He does ask Hoshi to bring him some takeout, though. Back on Vulcan, Trip is getting dressed for the wedding. Teles walks in and says, hey, you know what? Fuck it. If you love T'Pol, tell her. I don't condone your relationship with my daughter, you human scum, but it's not my life, and she should know how you really feel about her before she marries Sock. Koss. Whatever his name is. Trip says no. He doesn't want to make T'Pol's life any more complicated than it already is. Before the ceremony starts, a clearly distressed T'Pol kisses Trip on the cheek. Then they all walk out, and Trip watches T'Pol wed this total loser. The end! The obvious point of comparison for this episode is the TNG episode Family, which I reviewed earlier in this batch. Both episodes are about the heroes returning to Earth to take a bit of a breather in the aftermath of a traumatic mission. Both episodes feature characters reconnecting with family and struggling to reconcile their heroic reception with the inner loss of purpose that they feel. Home is not nearly as good an episode as Family, but it does a couple of things that are more interesting. and narratively and thematically adventurous than anything in that TNG episode, and it's easily one of the best episodes from Enterprise's final year. So, first and foremost, this one leans really heavily on the Trip and T'Pol romance. I was never all that deeply invested in their relationship, but that doesn't really matter in this case, because the episode emphasizes their star-crossed lovers status so strongly. I'm a sucker for that. People who want to be together but can't be because of some external circumstance, their families don't approve, or their cultures don't approve, or one of them is already attached to someone else. With Trip and T'Pol, the producers don't take any chances and saddle them with all three. T'Pol is getting pressure from her family and her culture to marry her fiancé, Kos, a weak non-entity of a man whose big move to seal the deal is saying to T'Pol, "If you marry me, my dad will get your mom a job. Somebody please chuck this dude into a volcano." Despite the fact that I don't really care about Trip or T'Pol in general, that situation compels me to care about them in the context of this episode. I feel for Trip. The poor guy, he loves T'Pol. He's lost his own family. He goes to Vulcan to be with her and meet her family, and it ends with him watching her get married to somebody else. How do you not sympathize with him after that? He even does the noble thing at the end, choosing not to confess his love and try to talk T'Pol out of it, because he doesn't want to make a bad situation for her even worse. Also, and this is my favorite line in the whole episode because the vulnerability and honesty of it just breaks my heart, he says to T'Pol's mom, "If I tell T'Pol how I feel, she might call off the wedding, or worse, she might not call it off." Oof. I feel for T'Pol as well, and a lot of that feeling is brought out by Jolene Blaylock's performance. She is so good in this episode. T'Pol is being pulled in two different directions. Her heart wants to go one way, and seemingly everything else in her life is wanting her to go the other way. And Blaylock plays that conflict beautifully. There's a tension about T'Pol in all of her scenes once they arrive on Vulcan that is gripping. The way she plays T'Pol in the moments leading up to the wedding ceremony, where she seems almost paralyzed, not wanting to marry this guy, but also knowing that she is going to marry this guy, is truly extraordinary. And that quick, desperate peck on the cheek she gives to Trip, that small gesture that says so much, that tiny act of rebellion and of love. Yeah, no notes. That was great. The Trip and T'Pol plot is the heart of the episode, but I really like Captain Archer's story here too. Archer's section is the closest emotional and thematic match for TNG's family, with Archer grappling with something very similar to what Captain Picard goes through after coming home following his abduction by the Borg. Like Picard, Archer finds himself shaken and disillusioned. The main difference is that for Archer, those feelings are much, much closer to the surface, and there's less doubt and trauma and a lot more anger. Anger at himself and anger at outer space for not being what he thought it was going to be. Archer is a guy who spent his whole life dreaming of being an astronaut who was forced to become a soldier. There's something so touching and human about the bitterness he expresses to Captain Hernandez. He thinks himself a fool for pushing back against suggestions that Enterprise be more heavily armed prior to its initial launch. He urges Hernandez to be more on guard than he was, to learn from what he regards as his own naive mistakes. Hearing the shame and regret in his voice as he tells Hernandez about some of the things he did on Enterprise's mission into the Expanse helps to explain why he was so touchy and defensive when Saval questioned him during the debriefing. It's not just that Saval was challenging Archer's decisions, it's that Archer, at least partially, thinks Saval is right. The resolution to all of this is a bit too neat. Archer and Hernandez banging out on the mountain, and he suddenly sees the world through the hopeful and optimistic eyes of a dude who just got laid. It's not unrealistic as far as human behavior, but it's also not the most dramatically satisfying way to go. However, I appreciate that they went this direction with Archer. It's a way of acknowledging his flaws, something the show isn't always very good at, and using those flaws to deepen and enrich his character. There's a moment between Archer and Saval near the end that I think shows some of the sharpest writing in the episode. We've already seen a moment between Trip and Teles on Vulcan where Teles implies that Vulcans don't express gratitude. Then, at the end of their conversation, after the debriefing, Saval offers a handshake to Archer and tells him thank you. It's a beautifully understated example of a setup and a payoff. Teles tells us something in that earlier scene that is important for that scene. It speaks to how T'Pol has been influenced by the time she spent with humans, but it also imparts added meaning to something in a later scene when Saval expresses gratitude to Archer. It's very nice work. There's one more idea in this episode that I really like, and it's the introduction of xenophobic sentiment on Earth. I know some Trekkies are extremely attached to the classic Roddenberryan notion that in the future humanity has outgrown all its prejudices, but I've never had much use for that. To me, it's far more interesting and far more useful if most humans believe they've outgrown their prejudices, but they actually haven't. This episode shows an example of how that should work. Malcolm tells Phlox he can't quite believe it. Humans aren't supposed to behave this way. And yet, we see that humans, some humans, do behave this way. The point isn't that it's hopeless and humanity will never get any better. The point is there will always be room for improvement. And that instinct to reject the outsider and blame an entire group for the actions of a few will always be with us and will always be something we have to fight against. Star Trek can still show us how much better our future can be if we stop allowing ourselves to be led by our intolerance and fears and biases without promoting the self-flattering fantasy that we'll ever be totally rid of those qualities. I do wish the scene between Phlox and Hoshi near the end had played out a little differently. Phlox's response is understandable and in character for him. He tells Hoshi that he doesn't blame the xenophobic humans who hassled him. Earth experienced a terrible trauma in the Xindi attack, and it will take some time to heal. I don't have a problem with Phlox saying that. I have a problem with that being the last word on the subject. Hoshi does push back against Phlox's sympathetic attitude toward the bigots. She tells him the way to deal with prejudice isn't to hide from it, but to continue living your life in defiance of it. But she says that before Phlox says his bit about how he can't blame the bigots and Earth just needs time to heal. I think those sentiments would play better if the order was flipped. Let Phlox be all, Earth was attacked, it'll take time to heal. That's a very Phlox attitude. But give Hoshi the last word. Let her leave Phlox with the thought that no matter how much he sympathizes with the trauma the people of Earth experienced in the Xindi attack, there is no excuse for xenophobia, and he should not be hiding on the ship to avoid upsetting the bigots. Remember, this series was originally broadcast in the years immediately following the 9/11 attacks. Hearing Phlox say, I don't blame these people for attacking foreigners after the trauma they suffered when some foreigners attacked them, sounds an awful lot like letting people off the hook for the horrendous Islamophobia that infected the country after 9/11. I don't think that was the intention, but that's what it sounds like. It's the only part of the episode that I really wish was different. It just leaves a bad taste. Home was directed by Alan Croker, who directed a dozen episodes of Enterprise in total, including the series finale, as well as 13 episodes each of Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Star Trek Voyager, including both of those series finales as well. I guess he found his spot. The episode was written by Mike Sussman, who wrote or co-wrote 22 episodes of Enterprise, including one of my very favorites, Regeneration, and also wrote or co-wrote 11 episodes of Voyager. For much of its fourth and final season, Enterprise circles the drain, devoting multi-episode arcs to canon mending and table setting and revisiting played-out concepts like the Mirror Universe, but every once in a while it works. And when that happens, it's usually because the creators decide to serve the interests of their show and their characters rather than fuss about where it fits in with the rest of Star Trek. This is such an episode, a story about these people, the journey they have taken, the things they carry because of that journey, and the things that compel them to continue that journey, no matter how far it takes them from home. Those are my thoughts on Home. What do you think of this episode? Please share your thoughts with me in the comments. If you'd like to support this channel, and I sure wish you would, if you can afford it, you can do so by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, becoming a channel member by clicking the join button, or by making a one-time gift by clicking the thanks button, or via PayPal or Venmo. Links are in the description. That's it for this batch of reviews, and indeed for this year of Star Trek Retro Reviews. This series is taking a break for the next 2 weeks, but please join me on January 8th for the start of the first retro review batch of the new year. The theme for the next batch will be Klingons! And the first episode reviewed will be, what else? The classic Star Trek episode that introduced the Klingons, Errand of Mercy. See you next time for that one. Thanks for watching. Happy holidays, and take care, everybody.